Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett. Let's get started. This is the time of the week where I go over my top 10 games for college football, my predictions for them. So let's get started. So number 10, you got Purdue versus Maryland. It's a noon game, Eastern time game on Big Ten Network. Maryland is one of those teams where it's like, okay, they lost to Michigan as expected, but they kept it close, and then they trounced Michigan State. So it's like, okay, you know, I know Maryland lost to Michigan, but it was barely. So it's like, okay, maybe not Ohio State, but could they contend with Penn State? Could they maybe make things interesting in the Big Ten race? Well, if they win here, then that definitely helps their cause there, especially at home here. And as far as Purdue goes, I know you got off to a rough start. Losing at home to Penn State in a game you should have won, and then by losing at the buzzer to Syracuse, who's a good team, but still losing at the buzzer there. But it's like, but you upset Minnesota at Minnesota, who's for the past 2 weeks has been basically the favorites of the Big Ten West Division. So it's like, so now it's like that race is wide open as far as who's going to win it. So if you're Purdue, while you already have 2 losses, including one Big Ten, it's like things are still out for you. You can still win your division. Your goals are still there. So this is going to be a high scoring game in my opinion because both offenses can score that ball. But in the end, since this is Maryland at home, I'm going to take them to win here. I have Maryland 31-27. Um, I wouldn't I wouldn't bet on the Maryland 3.5. I wouldn't. I'm not sure if they'll cover that or not. I know I do have them barely covering it, but that's a kind of a risk there. Um, Next, you got Texas A&M versus number one Alabama. Alabama's favorite by 24 points here. CBS game 8 p.m. All the trash talk in between those two head coaches, Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban, in the offseason. We finally get to see these two teams on the field. The problem is the Aggies have not lived up to their end of bargain to make this like a top 10 or even a top 25 matchup. Both teams don't know if they're um, starting quarterback, will return face of Bryson for Bama, obviously, then Max Johnson for A&M. Um, while the Aggies definitely can contain the Crimson Tide offense, assuming Bryce Young is out, I don't think the Aggies offense will have any success against Alabama defense. They're just not dynamic enough on offense, so therefore I do think Alabama gets the big win at home. Again, 24 points, not sure. I wouldn't safely say Alabama covers that, but it'll be multiple possessions. I know that as Alabama wins 28-10. 8, you got Arkansas versus 23 Mississippi State, noon game SEC Network. And Arkansas needs to get their season back on track here. After starting 3-0, with win against now top 25 team in Cincinnati and South Carolina, we'll see if they make a bowl game, but they suffer 2 losses in a row, and the schedule is not getting easier for them. With at BYU on the horizon next week. This team was supposed to kind of contend to be like the second best team in the SEC West, but right now their goal is just to make a bowl game at this point of the way things are rolling right now. The one weakness Arkansas clearly has is their pass defense, and Mississippi State, with their star quarterback Will Rogers and the way they like to throw the rock around, like that's not a great ideal scenario there. So I don't see how the Razorbacks defense on the road can contain the Bulldogs offense. Therefore, I'm going with Mississippi State to get an exciting win here. I had the money 34-27. Mississippi's favorite for 6.5. Again, I'm not sure if they'll exact cover or not. We'll see. 7, you got Florida State versus 14 North Carolina State. North Carolina State's favorite by 3 at home here. 8 p.m. SC Network game. Both teams had their first big test in conference play, and both came up short. This game right here will kind of determine who's going to bounce back and contend for most likely second place in the division, and then who will just be mediocre and try and get to a bowl game and nothing more. Like I said last week, the Wolfpack quarterback David Leary is one of the best, was one of the better QBs in the country, and he's the better QB this match in my opinion. So, and especially with that home here, I know they're going to bounce back after they didn't play to their standards last week. So I have North Carolina State winning. And actually, this is one of those games where, even though everything suggests it should be close, I don't think it's going to be close. I have North Carolina State winning 31-14. 6, you got 8 Tennessee versus 25 LSU. Tennessee 3-point favorite on the road here, a noon game on ESPN. I know both teams' records may seem like this should be a close game, but Tennessee's clearly better than LSU, in my opinion, especially on offense. However, as we saw with number 1 Georgia struggle on the road to mediocre Missouri, maybe it's a close game just because it's in Death Valley. We'll see. In my opinion, I don't think that'll be the case. I have Tennessee winning by double digits here. I have them winning 34-17. 5, you got 16 BYU versus Notre Dame, who's a 3-point favorite here in Vegas. NBC game 7:30. After the 0-2 start, Notre Dame has bounced back, winning their next 2 games, finally looking like a somewhat explosive offense, especially against a bad North Carolina defense, and in their last game before the bye week. BYU was winning, but their defense has been very leaky the past 3 years, especially rush defense-wise. And since the Irish love to run the ball, that could be a potential matchup there. But luckily for BYU, the quarterback Drew Pine is just okay at best. So as long as they can, contain him, make him force mistakes and all that, and then maybe that'll help out the rush defense. One factor to keep in mind here is that I don't think the Cougars will come out flat in this game because the Irish, a little fact here, the Irish were contractually supposed to play in Provo because they played in Notre Dame in 2013, and they're like, okay, you're supposed to come to Provo. Well, they weren't coming to Provo. They didn't want the smoke, And then finally, B was like, okay, well, how about in Vegas, neutral field, and you can call it a home game. I was like, okay, sure, fine, we'll do that, So I know the BYU players are a little bit, upset, and a lot of fans are definitely upset that they're not coming to Provo, so that's definitely not a factor here. And then plus, it's one of those games, like you look at just who is the better quarterback, and that's clearly Jaron Hall here, and you got to go with the better quarterback. So I'm going to go with BYU here, barely, in a more defensive type of game here. I have BYU winning 24-20. 4, you got Washington State versus 6 USC, 7:30 game on Fox. USC is the better team here, but this is definitely a trap game for USC. The Trojans play at Utah next week. The winner most likely goes to the Pac-12 title game. So this team could be looking ahead, and if they're not careful, the Red Cougars here can definitely upset them. Washington State has showed they are good, against good teams. Like, for example, they gave Oregon, a big run for their money. They upset Wisconsin earlier, in the year at Wisconsin. And Washington State is definitely a good running team here. The USC's defense can be suspect at times. I do think in the end USC will win this game because the Trojans' offense will be just too much for the Cougars' defense in the end. But this game would be too close for comfort for USC fans. So I do not have them covering 11.5 points that they're favored by. I have USC winning by just 4, 31-27. 3, you got 11 Utah versus 18 UCLA, 3:30 game on Fox. Since UCLA had a soft schedule for the first 4 games, UCLA kind of needed to show last week against a ranked Washington team that they are the real deal this year. And boy, did they show that. They're just one of those teams that has a lot of veterans, and it shows. They're just so dynamic on offense, and their defense is able to force turnovers like they were last week against a good Washington team, then it seemed very hard to stop. However, Utah is used to the big moment, unlike Washington, who wasn't good last year. However, as I just mentioned before USC, the Utes need to be careful here not to look ahead to that USC game, I don't expect that to be an issue now. I expect this to be a shootout, and with whoever has the ball last wins, in my opinion. And because, Utah just drops those road games randomly once a year in conference play, this is the time where I think Utah just drops this game and UCLA rides their hot momentum here at the winning 37-34 in a thriller. 2, you got Texas versus Oklahoma, new game on ABC. You get the big Red River rivalry game here. Now, it's crazy that both teams aren't ranked here. But don't get the record shit confused. No matter the record in this rivalry, this is one of the best rivalries in college football, in my opinion. And it's usually close, no matter what team the records are for each team. For me, things will depend on if Oklahoma quarterback Dylan Gabriel is going to be able to play this game. It's a tougher spot for an inexperienced backup to come in and play a spectacular game this game, although Caleb Williams did last year, but he ended up being the better player than Spence Rattler. But that's here or there. But as for Texas, they are supposed to get their starting quarterback back, Quinn Ewers, which will unlock things in the passing game, in my opinion. And I'm going to take the Longhorns to win this game. Now, again, because the rivalry game, things are going to be weird and closer than it should be with the way Oklahoma's been playing recently. But I'm going to have Texas winning and barely covering the 6.5 points that are favored by 38-30. And then number 1, where college game debut, you have 17 TCU versus 19 Kansas in the battle of the undefeateds here. Before the season started, who knew that college game day would be in Lawrence, Kansas for an undefeated match between TCU and Kansas, but here we are. Kansas finally showed last week that they can win ugly and that their defense can actually play well, so that was very important for them. TCU is not a great defense, So Kansas should be able to score some points here. But boy, TCU head coach Sonny Dykes is already making an impact on his first season as one of the best and most unrated offensive minds in college football. I think this will be a shootout type of game here. But I do think Kansas' magical run will finally come to an end here as TCU establishes itself as a contender to win the conference. I have them winning 41-35. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. Please subscribe and tell John about me. Thank you very much, and y'all have a wonderful day.